Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Rush Deep Dive. Today we are deep diving into 1982's Signals. So, first things first, as we always do, we're going to read a bit from Hugh Symes' Art of Rush, this awesome book about the cover art, and then we'll talk about it. So here we go. This cover concept didn't reveal itself to me as readily as so many others had before, admits Hugh. We labored and fretted for 6 to 8 weeks over which visual premise would best convey this album's theme. We went down a lot of dead-end streets trying to find an idea for the artwork. It was the longest period of time and the most frustrating. We wanted to do something less elaborate, where we would take some chances with something more abstract, which is where I came up with the Dalmatian sniffing a fire hydrant idea. I was walking by fire station number 312 on Yorkville Avenue when I spotted their Dalmatian, no pun intended, and the then red Toronto hydrant out front, says Hugh. The Croatian breed of dog was once employed to run alongside horse-drawn fire carts to help calm the horses. Nowadays, Dalmatians remain firehouse mascots and a symbol of fire safety. I remember when Hugh was suggesting this interpretation of the title, not from song lyrics this time, like so many others, but just from the title. It's a tongue-in-cheek twist on other kinds of signals, says Neil. This cover is a smile. But it didn't make Rush manager Ray Daniels smile when he visited Hugh's office in the spring of 1982. This was the only time Ray had come to my studio, says Hugh. Ray said, "What are we going to do for the cover?" And Hugh says, "I think we're going to be a little bit glib and have a Dalmatian sniffing a fire hydrant." Ray Daniels was perplexed and said, "I don't know what the fuck this has to do with rock and roll." It's a strong image in which the colors, which include the recurring Rush combo of red and black, really pop. Hugh needed to find lettering that would complement rather than compete with the photo. To that end, he wrote the band's name with a Chinese paintbrush and India ink on watercolor paper. The thick strokes almost create the effect of a Rorschach test in which the blotted ink figures barely resemble letters. The back cover of Signals consists of a blueprint of a suburban neighborhood as depicted in the song Subdivisions. Neil's lyric describes how the uniformity of such subdivisions encourages conformity among its denizens. The blueprint's neat arrangement of quadrilateral cells gives it the appearance of a human hive. It's the sort of design that would have appalled Jane Jacobs, the famous Canadian critic of urban planning. A closer inspection of the drawing reveals a series of tongue-in-cheek landmarks. For starters, there's a tie-in to the Dalmatian on the front cover. On the blueprint, we see the red push pins denoting hydrants where the dog has marked its territory, hence the piss yellow line between the drafting pins, Hugh explains. The names of each band member pop up elsewhere in the fine print details of the blueprint. Alex says, "We all have nicknames. Dirk is Geddy's nickname, so Old Dirk Road is a play on that. There's a Lurkswood Mall in there. Lurkst is my nickname. There's a consulting engineer named Pratt for Neil. The neighborhood in the imaginary borough of Schmang, look up that at your own risk, also includes 2 landmarks that reflects Geddy's love of baseball. One of the streets near the cul-de-sac is called Line Drive, and a nearby secondary school is named after Warren Cromartie, outfielder and first baseman for the Montreal Expos at the time. I am always more satisfied when I feel challenged and off balance, even uncomfortable with the task of creating images that convey the unexpected, or at least dare to deviate from the norms of prog rock album cover art, even if it means failure," concludes Hugh, "more so than producing inside some safe, predictable framework whose outcome is comfortable, guaranteed, or even worse, familiar. And if you have energized someone or sensitized them, then hopefully you will have made a difference." Pretty cool stuff. Bunch of stuff that I was not aware of, such as some of the facts on the back cover. But I'm curious what you guys think of the front cover, because to this date, Hugh did Caress of Steel up until Signals, and I think this is probably the most simple cover to date. So I'm curious, kind of kind of what your thoughts are on it.
Well, may I make a thought about the back cover for 1 second?
Go for it.
If it's okay with you. Now, again, I don't know if this is going to work. Okay. If it doesn't, well, that's why God created editing. But check this out. You see it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
That is Warren Cromartie's baseball card. Okay. From around the time when Geddy Lee was naming it the Warren Cromartie Secondary School. He was a player of color, one of the few that I believe had ever played for the Expos. And again, it really does reflect not only Geddy's love of baseball, but Geddy's respect for players of color. And we all know that later he's going to make a huge donation to the Negro National Baseball Museum in Kansas City. And he has been just a champion of equality in baseball and of remembering and telling the story. So it's kind of like, of all the people he could have named a school after in his mythical subdivision, it's significant that it was Warren Cromartie. And as a baseball historian, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Neat.
I do think that I've read somewhere that Warren Cromartie actually became a fan of the band after this too. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I mean, to me, yeah, the back cover is certainly interesting. I had not known what the push pins were until reading this, denoting where the dog marked his territory, hence signals. And with the font, how that was done, I thought that was pretty interesting.
But
If you didn't see those,
I'm sorry.
sorry,
Go
Don.
ahead.
No,
I was
please.
gonna, if you didn't see those letters together spelling Rush, and you just saw them as individual characters, I don't think I would know what they were. I wouldn't
Right.
recognize them as letters, but you put them together and it reads.
And we're going to see Neil mention in other songs, including songs that we've done in previous webcasts, about territories, about, okay, in this case, it's a dog marking his territory, but ain't we all like that? Don't we have like our little fiefdom, our little territory, and we're going to guard it jealously? So, and when you look at it, it's kind of ridiculous, but human nature can be like that. And Neil is, if anything, a student of human nature.
It's a very simple cover that does the trick. Another cool thing I wanted to touch on this because I thought it was interesting. In the liner notes, Geddy Lee, pitcher, Alex Lifeson, first base, Neil Peart, third base. And this was the interesting part. Assisted by Robbie Whalen, right field.
Yeah.
We talked about him with After Image in the Grace Under Pressure deep dive. So anything else you guys want to add before we talk about the music?
Well, I really like the colors. I mean, I think it's super fresh. They essentially are saying that we're moving into the 80s and we're moving into this sort of bank of bands rather than a new wave of British heavy metal or a heavy metal at all bank of bands with those colors. Moving away from the very, very dramatic and stately, but still kind of strong and male colors of the previous albums, right? Or most of them, but this has a very 80s feel. It has a very modern 80s feel. I'm trying to think. Rick Springfield used the Dalmatians before as well, and I remember Dogs on other covers. There was I think the Laughing Dogs album that was supposed to be a Kiss album cover, I believe.
Yeah, the Wicked Lester.
Yeah, and
album,
then Hounds used Dogs on their covers. So
didn't Russ Ballard have a cover?
Yeah, Barnett Dogs had illustrated dogs on his cover. So it's kind of a bit of an interesting trope, but I think the Rick Springfield is actually really close because he did
that a couple of times because he had working class dog, and then he had the dog in the back of the limo. Success hasn't spoiled me yet.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
yeah, very cool.
Now, watch this segue. The Digital Men, that is, there's supposed to be Digital Men here. Well, that's the song that Martin's going to talk about. So Martin's going to deep dive Digital Man. Take it
All
away.
right. So Digital Man, I think I've got this straight. So it sounds like it was started in late 81 at Le Studio, and they call that kind of like some writing sessions at Le Studio. But it sounds like that's kind of mixed in with the touch up of Exit Stage Left sessions. And then after that, I guess it moves to Muskoka and the Grange. And that's where you get, the story of Neil writing lyrics by the fire while Alex and Geddy work in the barn on music, and they're trying to marry these things together. So I guess they've got this song started. And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of the little bit of push and pull with Terry, who didn't like the reggae elements of the song, and they just kept hammering at it and trying to convince him. And Terry eventually just kind of gave up and said, okay, fine, we'll go with this. I suppose that's something that happens near the end when they've got the thing more or less put together and they're back at the studio. So that's kind of the way I've sort of pieced together that I think this works with the writing. Moving into the music of it, I really like this song in that, I mean, the whole thing is in 4/4 time. It starts with the heavy music, but then the air is let out of the balloon, and I'm not crazy about that part. I've never liked that in songs where the verse starts and everybody kind of stops playing, and you've got Neil playing essentially on bass drum and hi-hat and then the little bass thing. But that ends really quickly because the second part of the verse, the original music comes back, and that's going along, pulsating along while Geddy, sings his lyrics, and they go right into that. So it's got that part, and it's got the chorus part, but it's also got two separate break sections. And one of them is where they combine at 250. It goes into this totally new music that's not verse or chorus. That's the first break section, and that's where you hear them working along with that sequencer part. And then after that, it goes into the kind of like the Walking on the Moon Police part, where it really, for the first time, really sounds like the Police. You get hints of a reggae thing in the verse where the air is let out of the balloon, but you really get it here. So this is where you actually really get a police reggae part. Although the the Spend the Night in Zion part is also the chorus, right? Is definitely the big downstroke reggae. That's more traditional reggae, and this break part is more like a police reggae part. And the kind of cool thing about it that I like is that it reminds me a little bit of the La Via Strangiato solo, where things start slow and relaxed and they kind of pick up. And that's what you get with Alex's solo here. He's not even really soloing when this first starts. He's just off in dreamland like an Andy Summers, and then he starts soloing, and then it starts going crazy. So that's really kind of cool. So you got two breaks, you've got verse, and the verse is done slightly two different ways. So there's like an A and a B of that. And you've got the chorus in terms of all the different kinds of music on here. One cool thing, of course, is at the end, you've got the funny fade on it. So this is one of the songs on Signals that has a fade. And there you've got, Geddy's voice getting lower with the plays fast forward and that sort of thing going on. And Neil does some really cool fills. The last thing I want to mention about the music is that I love the way how Neil is the guy who kicks off this song with that nice, rousing, short but round fill, and then you're into the music, right? And that's where when you hear Neil's drums naked like that and a good sampling of all the drums, that's why this is my favorite Rush album, because the drum sound on this album is exquisite. I mean, my favorite drum sound of all time is Genesis on Abacab, but this is a close second. These are beautiful, beautiful drum sounds and quite analog sounding as well. One more point on the music. Geddy's bass on here, beautiful sound on Geddy's bass as well, but he actually does a lot of that singing along with the bass line in this, which bass players kind of like to do because it makes the singing easier sometimes when you marry the two together. But he's really kind of singing along with the bass line on here. That's it kind of for the music. Going into the lyrics, I love these lyrics because they remind me a little bit not of Analog Kid. I mean, the title makes you want to think Analog Kid, but it's more like Tom Sawyer. But the cool thing here is that whole story, very amusing story of of Peter Jensen, the guy who's going to mix moving pictures digitally, right? And you know, he's the guy who brings in all the digital equipment. And then they have the story about how on this album, the studio now has all the digital equipment, and they're working out the bedding arrangements of where everybody's going to sleep. And then somebody makes a wisecrack and says, well, I guess we don't need a bed for the digital man. And then they say, oh, that's it. That's fantastic. That's what we're kind of going to go with. Right. But the other thing I like about this, well, okay. So first of all, what's really cool is that there's this dichotomy all over it between, you know, the fast, you know, the new world man version of a digital man, and then it's like love to spend some time in Zion and what does it go, lovers whatever here, but so there's the you know, the wistfulness of wanting to be an analog kid in here, mixed with the digital man thing. But what I also find kind of interesting here is that you can read this whole lyric as the new work remotely from Zoom post-COVID atmosphere. So it really sounds like a song that shows, you know, the new kind of worker can work away from home. And I picked out a few lines here. His world is under anesthetic, subdivided and synthetic. He won't need a bed. He's a digital man. We know where that comes from. But here's like, he won't need a cubicle. He's a digital man, right? But what else did I have here? Yeah, his world is under observation. We monitor his station. So there's a little bit of, you know, you're on Zoom, you're kind of being monitored, you're here, you're using a monitor for work. So it's kind of cool. Like throughout it reads like an oblique version of you know, the idea where, you know, very, very materially real estate prices are going up a little. Yeah, they're weirdly going up in the cities still a lot. But they're going up by, you know, 9 to 11% more in the outskirts of town and in the small towns, because people can work remotely and they're thinking about that. So there's a funny sort of tie-in with this song as well. And like I say, I think you could almost put this lyric and the Tom Sawyer lyric together and get this really complex, cool digital man kind of thing. And one last thing I remember now, Geddy also said something about how he sort of alluded to the idea that the digital man was a little bit eccentric, and we won't talk about what this Peter Jensen guy was like, but he also alluded to, in more abstract general terms, that these digital guys are kind of like know-it-alls and bragging and trying to teach you all this stuff, and you're you know, you're subordinate to them, you don't know all this, and they're trying to like drag you into the digital world a little more. So that's kind of about all I had on it. Good long song, pretty heavy song. Yeah, it's got, like I say, the complex reggae feels in it, some really nice drum fills, but generally it's a 4/4 song, and it sounds beautiful. The blend of all the instruments, like I say, production means a big deal to me, and on this album, the blend between everybody. I mean, everybody sounds like everybody almost sounds like they've got a little bit of synthesizer treatment on everything they're doing, whether it's the drums, the guitar, or the bass. It sounds like there's been some kind of neat unifying factor that brings everything together, and you hear it on this song. So Digital Man, there you go.
I never thought of it like relating to now and like,
Yeah,
you know,
that's amazing.
pandemic world. Like, yeah, I never even considered it. This song, it sounds like this song was the song that split Terry Brown from the band too. Maybe not specifically this song, but this was one of the, you know, larger contributing factors from what I can find. But yeah, I think this song is, you know, the character in Digital Man is kind of who was left behind in the Analog Kid. I think I know you had touched on that, Martin. I literally think it's the progression of that character.
And they got Geddy's vocals doubled when it goes to that dun, 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 dun. They've doubled his vocal on there. I think they do the same thing in the chorus of Subdivisions that just makes the vocals the center of attention. It's really well produced, and it's makes you wonder what another album would have sounded like with Terry at the helm. But yeah, it's a nice, like you said, it's just a perfect blend.
Donna, you want to say anything about Digital Man?
I think it's been said and said eloquently.
The last thing that I wanted to touch on about this song was uh, Midas Rush Oddities. I don't know who's familiar with that, but there was a website that used to be around. It's no longer around, but someone basically dug up some kind of hidden audio in songs. And what was found at the end of Digital Man during that fade out, where you hear basically nothing, what I believe they did was they just cranked the volume, and what you hear is Getty speaking. He don't need a grape. He's a digital ape. And I always thought that was a nice little Easter egg at the end of the song. So figured this would be a good place to share that.
Yeah, I was playing that
deep.
ending a few times, and I couldn't tell whether there was an actual processed turning down the speed on Getty's voice or whether he's just speaking it, because it sounds like he goes low once and then he goes once again, and it sounds like maybe, but it's done so well if that's the case that it sounds very natural, because I've heard those where, you know, they do that to it, right? That's an effect, but that doesn't happen here. But it sounds like they might have just turned down his voice once, turned it down again, possibly, or he's just saying it that way.
Yep. Cool, awesome stuff. All right, nothing to fear but fear itself. Donna, the weapon.
Oh my God, I'm afraid I can't do this.
A very scary song.
This is a scary
really
one.
Hey, and now a few more puns brought to you by. May I just for 1 second say what a treat to be on a panel with Martin, who I've exchanged emails with over the years. I mean, you meet everybody on a Rush webcast. You really do. Okay.
Have you guys ever been on a Rush
Very
cast?
nice. I was trying to think. We've been in so many configurations. I wasn't sure if we had been or not. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I know we've emailed, and I know we've been at conventions. See, there's only 6 people in the world, okay, and they all know each other, and they're all Rush fans. Andy Curran says hello, by the way. So I mean, this is just life. Everybody knows everybody, and now back to the music. So I find this song really interesting, and I guess the reason I find it really interesting is, of course, it's a recurring theme for Neil. Okay, you've got Witch Hunt from 1981, I do believe. You got The Weapon, like 82, The Enemy Within, 84, and then later the theme is revisited, Freeze from Vapor Trails in 2002. It was originally referred to as the Fear Trilogy, except there's like 4 songs, and that I guess is not a trilogy. That's a quadrilogy or something. But the fact remains, the idea of what we are afraid of, and are we more motivated by love, or are we more motivated by fear? And this is something that the band plays with repeatedly. I mean, I keep thinking back to the line of, you know, from another song, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. I mean, if you're on the sidelines, if you're paralyzed by indecision, if you're paralyzed by fear, even to the point where you can't make decisions about your own life. And that's why Neil opens with that line from Franklin Delano Roosevelt from 1933, the thing about we've got nothing to fear but fear itself. Roosevelt, said Donna, who was a media historian, Roosevelt was perhaps the first radio president. Now, no, he was not the first president to be on the radio. There were others before him, but he was the first one to really use radio to kind of comfort the nation, the way later presidents would become like TV presidents or TV prime ministers. Roosevelt is taking over in the depths of the Great Depression. And he knows the nation is starving, the nation is terrified, the nation doesn't know what to do. And he just takes it on and says, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. In other words, don't be paralyzed by your fear. Things look terrible, but we are going to power through this. We're going to get through this. People took him very, very seriously. His fireside chats, there were more than 30 of those radio talks where people just imagined Donna, what's your point? We're not doing history. Except, yes, we are, because Neil is fascinated by how fear has changed the course of history and how fear has changed people's lives. It has kept them from getting love. It has kept them from pursuing careers. He's talked about this, okay? In fact, when the terrible things happened to him, where he lost his daughter and he lost his wife and he went off on that long motorcycle ride, he could have given into the fear. He could have given into the doubt. He could have decided, my career's over, what's the point? But he came back. He pressed through it. And I think we're all glad he did, because boy, howdy, did he write some great songs after that. Okay. Even your cat agrees, Ryan. Your cat is sitting behind you just saying, yeah, what she said. So the fact remains, we've got nothing to fear but fear itself, not pain or failure, not fatal tragedy, not the faulty units in the mad machinery. When I heard that line, I thought, oh, American woman, the Guess Who. I don't need your war machines. I don't need your ghetto scenes. You know, I mean, the fact remains that so many people are caught up in the war machinery. They make money from it. Conflict is big business. There was a great theorist who is one of my favorites named Neil Postman, and he talked about how news very often frames the stories in the conflict frame. In other words, a good guy versus a bad guy, something good versus something evil. Now, agreed, there are times when there is terrible evil in the world. Let's talk Hitler. Let's talk some current events. Why don't we? But the fact remains that many times we look at life as if there's evil and it's overwhelming. So what could we possibly do? And Neil is saying there has to be something you can possibly do. Okay. So he's talking about the iron fist in a velvet glove, which comes from Napoleon. It's not clear that Napoleon ever really said it, but it was used to refer to him. It was used to, like, soft power, like make it seem like, you don't look tough, but don't mess with this person. So he's talking about thy kingdoms will be done. That, of course, comes from what is called the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Neil may not have been traditionally religious, but as a writer, as a poet, he drew from scriptures of all faiths. And what is the Lord's Prayer about? It's about being grateful, about accepting your situation, but not being afraid of it. It's about trusting the Lord and using that trust to continue on, to help get through it, to help do the right thing. What I find interesting about this song is the repetitions. Now, again, I've talked about this before. Neil never repeats anything by accident, okay? So there's a line in here about the things that he fears are a weapon to be held against him. We're going to see that again. The things that he fears are a weapon to be held against him. Can't fear be used as a weapon? People are so afraid to find out the truth, okay? I don't want to turn this into current events, but something comes to mind. There are people, for example, in Russia, where the media, for all intents and purposes, have been completely shut down and replaced by state-run media. And Ukrainians who have relatives in Russia are saying, look at what's happening. And the folks in Russia are, no, that isn't happening. And we see this in politics. No, my side would never do something like that. Well, yeah, actually, your side might do something like that. But people would rather confirm what they already believe rather than look at both sides of the issue. So I find this song to be way ahead of its time in that regard, okay? Can any part of life be larger than life? Even love must be limited by time. And yet fear seems to outlast love sometimes because we give into it. And Neil is telling us not to do that. He's not afraid of your judgment. He knows of horrors worse than your hell. He's a little bit afraid of dying, but he's a lot more afraid of your lying. Don't lie. Don't give in to fear. Make yourself bigger than that. Decide to do the right thing. Remember the words of Roosevelt. We've got nothing to fear but fear itself. Not pain, not failure, not tragedy. We will get through this if we don't give in to our fears.
Wow. That was very cool. That was awesome.
Very well said.
Yeah, thanks for that.
This is why you pay me the big bucks.
Oh yeah.
And
I like how
by the
Neil
way,
could-
the other thing that I meant to get to, and I was kind of heading in that direction, the line about the knowledge that they fear is a weapon to be used against them. And that's, again, aren't we seeing that every single time? Partisan bickering breaks out. And I don't care what country you're watching this from, I promise you that conflict frame, our side good, their side terrible, let's not even talk to them. One of the things I love about Rush concerts, and I miss them, is the fact that at a Rush concert, you might meet righties, you might meet lefties, you might meet folks from the center, folks who are religious, folks who are atheists, but they could all get together around the music of Rush. And I think that's also what Neil is saying. Don't become so caught up in your partisanship that you become part of the war machinery.
I like how Neil, like you said, like he never repeats himself unless it's very much on purpose, or they'll sing the same, it'll be the same melody, but it'll be different lyrics. So where you have Iron Fist and a Velvet Glove, then he says, like a steely blade in a silken sheath. It's the same thing, but it's different. And for some reason, and we're not going to get political here, I'm not the least bit political, but what Donna was just saying made me think of the video for Right Now by Van Halen, where it's right now this, right now that. And I think there's one part where it says, right now our government is doing things we think only other countries' governments do.
I thought of Billy Joel's song, "We Didn't Start the Fire."
Right.
You know, that wasn't us. I mean, it's always been burning. I mean, you know, we've always been against, except we weren't always against them. And there will come a time when we will be allied with them. And then we're supposed to just forget that we were against them. And that's the sad part of all of it. And that's where music is such a universal language if people will listen, if they won't give in to their fear.
I just want to add one thing here that I think I've said a couple times on our YouTube channel, but being such a fan of Alex and his guitar work and how he's had to pick his spots throughout the synth era, right? This guitar solo, if you had to quantify Alex solos that fit the song, or if you could quantify that somehow, I think this would take the cake. This would be number one. This solo is haunting, it's melodic, but it's beautiful at the same time. And similar to like what Martin was saying about La Villa Stringiato, the solo in this song, it just slowly builds and then it just gets to this high point. And I just can't think of a solo that fits any Rush song better than this one does. Absolutely
and
love it.
Not only just the solo, I mean, you're expecting, because it has sort of like a very ponderous, deep meaning, you know, where they shout about love, but when push comes to shove, they live for the things they're afraid of. And yet it's kind of like almost danceable, for heaven's sake. I mean, it's just sort of,
right.
I mean, this is where Rush are always full of surprises. Okay. Just when you think, aha, this one's going to be ponderous heavy metal, or this one's going to be a power ballad, or you just never know.
I mean, speaking of danceable, I mean, even Count Floyd in the intro of On Grace Under Pressure, he says, "Look at that guy dancing. He's scary too," right? But what a song! What a phenomenal song!
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that it's pretty interesting as a side two starter. and you listen to it and you think it's odd that it's not particularly stadium rock, but they're kind of like recreating stadium rock in their own image. That it's very wide and strident, and there are some big beats in it as well, but most of the chords are very dark and King Crimson like throughout the whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing is that the verse of it really has the same vibe as the chorus of Digital Man. Just very sort of really direct to the, you know, combo Police and traditional reggae kind of feel in it. But yeah, great song, great sounding.
Listen to Neil's drum patterns too, and watch them on the Grace Under Pressure live DVD. You know, he's playing and flips the stick and playing, he flips the stick again. It's so perfect. It's so synced up, so perfect. All right, so I have the joy of talking about Countdown. This is the last track on this record. It is one that I feel like a lot of people kind of glance over because of the you know, the NASA audio and the launch sequence in there, and I'll get to that. But the first thing that I noticed with Countdown is it seems to kind of round out Signals. It's kind of a full circle moment because it opens with pounding synths similar to that on Subdivisions. And I thought that was kind of intentional, really. I mean, it seems like it's intentional. The next thing I wanted to mention here is from this esteemed Rush author. His name is Martin Popoff. And says, this is from Contents Under Pressure, Martin, by the way, but definitely not a favorite of Neil's. Countdown is the surging, shifting closer on Signals that was inspired by a trip the band took to Cape Canaveral in 1981 to watch the liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia from the VIP area, Red Sector A. The song's video would be memorable for its NASA authorized space footage, and that's a tongue twister. But you know, I mean, at this point in their career, you know, they're playing around with synths and they're experimenting and with technology. And I don't think it's much of a coincidence that they're doing that as, you know, the US and the world really are experimenting with technology as well, bigger technology, but on the world stage, right? I don't think it's any coincidence that you know, they're writing this historical song about the advancement of technology in the world as they're doing that themselves. So pertaining to the lyrics, I think the one thing that comes to mind when I read through these lyrics is the imagery that Neil paints in your head. He puts you there on site, like he basically puts you there on site in Red Sector A with the band with these lyrics, right? Yeah, you know, starts lit up with anticipation. We arrive at the launching site. The sky is still dark, nearing dawn on the Florida coastline. He's talking about circling choppers and with roving searchlight beams, and this magic day when super science mingles with the bright stuff of dreams. But really, where it gets cool is floodlit in the hazy distance, the star of this unearthly show, venting vapors like the breath of a sleeping white dragon. I love that lyric because it gives you such a visual of what is happening and what they're experiencing, right? It's similar to that of a very unpopular Rush song from Hold Your Fire, Tai Shan. He puts you there, right? He literally puts you at the top of that sacred mountain with his lyrics. Paints such a beautiful picture. Doing the same here. You know, the air is charged, a humid, motionless mass. The crowds and the cameras and the cars full of spectators pass, and excitement so thick you could cut it with a knife. I mean, that's literally what they're experiencing. That's literally what the world is experiencing at that time, right? And then finally, I think it's the way Geddy delivers this lyric. Scorching blast of golden fire as it slowly leaves the ground. His voice escalates, right? Tears away with a mighty force. You know, the air is shattered by that awesome sound. The way he delivers that, it's just so adds to the atmosphere of this song and to the excitement, and makes you wish that you were there. And it's very similar to that of in Manhattan Project on Power Windows, where Geddy delivers the line, flying out of the shockwave, the Enola Gay flying out of the shockwave. It puts you in the seat of that pilot, right? And it just further magnifies that moment in time with these lyrics. Finally, in fascination with the eyes of the world we stare. I think that's just it just completely sums up the moment, right? It completely sums up what's happening. We're literally going to space. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Even today, really, it's crazy to think about. And what is so awesome about this song is it has, in my opinion, phenomenal synthesizer solo from Geddy Lee, and just goes right up the keyboard, and then what they call a glissando, goes right down a bunch of keys with his thumb or his middle finger, I guess, and then descends right back down the keyboard. It's so impressive, and I think the way, similar to what I just mentioned about the weapons solo and how it fits with the song, this keyboard solo, it makes me visualize, how Geddy just goes right up the keyboard and how it just, the sound just escalates. It literally makes me think of a rocket taking off. Like, I mean, it literally puts that visual in my head. Now I wanted to just touch lastly on the NASA, the launch sequence audio. Now there's audio of this track on YouTube. I believe it's called, the channel that it's from is the Rush Musician and Fan channel, I think is what the channel is called. That person put together this song without the launch sequence. Now, if you want to go out and listen to it, it's fine. That's fine. It's cool to see, highlight what the music a little bit more, but the NASA audio playing in the background further, I think it really adds to this song. I think it really makes this song, really rounds out this song, and I think it's needed. At the end of the track where the band's just kind of jamming, the last like 40 seconds or 50 seconds of the song, you got the NASA audio, what of you, and then I guess the bass says back, glad you're enjoying it. And it says, Jay, how does it all look? I mean, just that added audio to this track, it just gives you that it's the historical significance of it. I mean, without it, I don't think this song is as good. I mean, I think this is a song that really grew on me deep diving it. To be honest, it was never really one of my favorites from Signals, but now I think it is. And I think this song deserves a second listen from anyone, that shot it down because of the added NASA audio and all that. It's a phenomenal track.
Yeah.
Phenomenal historical piece.
One thing I'd like to add, I love that synth part too, and it reminds me of the Stranglers, Dave Greenfield, and a lot of the things he does, and also reminds me of Alan Lanier in The Fire of Unknown Origin, the song, which is just from the year before, so that's 1981. But yeah, so it has just a kind of a cool, dark British Stranglers feel to it, I think. Other than that, just love the song. Nothing much else to say on it. It's just a great song, and again, beautiful blend with the synths.
I have to think that when they were recording it, I think the guys must have had an idea they were going to put something over it, because if you think of how Rush songs that do fade out, Grand Designs comes to mind. There's something different they throw in every few bars. They always change it up. It's not just a regular fade out. But this is literally down, 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 da 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 da, and they do it over and over again. And I have a feeling that they had envisioned, we're going to get some dialogue going back, and we're going to get something else to add to this. Not that the music doesn't sound good, but that's not a typical Rush fade. They literally play the same thing until it fades out. I think they had it in mind. We're going to see if we can get some actual astronauts talking to each other back here. I don't think it sounds right without it. I like hearing it without it to hear more of the clarity of the musical parts, but I don't think there's anything cheesy about it. It's about a space shuttle launch, so why wouldn't you have the actual astronauts talking to each other?
You said it better than me. It feels empty without it. it just feels, it doesn't feel right without the launch sequence in there. And it really just adds to the historical part of this song, I think. So cool. Well, Tim, you are up. Losing It.
Wow, no pressure. Yeah, one of the I don't know, a song that's taken on new meaning after new meaning after new meaning. It was significant at the time as being the only one of the 8 songs on Signals that Rush didn't do live. I mean, when they went out on tour for Signals, it was a pretty much a fresh set list that very little, I think, if I think about looking at the old set list pre-Permanent Waves, you know, it was this is our new sound, this is our new album, and you're going to hear a lot of it. But Losing It is one of those songs that they never played until I'm sorry, was it Clockwork Angels or was it R40 where they
R40.
it was R40, yeah.
It was R40.
And
5 times only.
yeah, and
I was
so
there.
that made it that
What
gave
a
it
masterpiece. Sorry, sorry to interrupt you, Tim.
was it Ben Mink when you saw it? Or
No,
was
it was Jonathan Dinklage. I
Okay.
saw it in New Jersey, and it was
Okay.
awesome.
And yeah, and it's not the first time that they had an outside musician. Certainly Hugh Syme played on songs here and there, but yeah, Ben Mink on the electric violin and also interesting. I mean, last 2 songs on this album, no guitar solos, but it totally fits. It's such a utterly unique sounding instrument. And but you know, it kind of reminds me of it's a much more solemn set of lyrics that kind of mine similar territory as Mission. And the idea is that, you know, some people achieve their dreams, some people wonder what it would be like. And this is looking at it almost fast forwarding from Mission years into the future when, you know, you've got the dancer and the writer that don't have the chops that they used to. They can't do what they used to do.
Uh-oh. Tim's losing it.
You know, watch your abilities atrophy. It's incredibly potent musically too. The music matches the lyrics so well. There aren't many Rush songs that, you know, as a listener, give me much like a real melancholy feel. There are a few. I mean, The Pass, certainly The Garden, and this is definitely one of them. The chord changes are, I think, just ingenious, and really, it's pretty dark. It's pretty grim sounding musically. The chorus starts to open up a little bit when it, you know, some were born to move the world, but you know, just when you start to settle into that, it goes into this minor, sadder still to watch it die. Now you're back. Now you're sad again. It's brilliant, and then it goes into the sort of I don't want to call it crazy metal section, but it kind of is. It kind of lets loose, and Ben Mink just goes nuts on the electric violin, and it just kind of adds to the. You almost get the sense of inner turmoil. Someone's so frustrated that they can't do what it was that they used to do, and it's another song where, and I already said, "Some were born to move the world." That quote has come up so many times in memory of Neil since he passed away, but. How wonderful is it that they did decide to bring it back and really give the fans that got to be there just that something special, extra. Like, not many bands do that. Not many bands go back into their catalog and dig out songs that they either haven't played in years or maybe never played. Like, I know they did it with Presto and How It Is, but what a great choice of a song to bring up, and so poignant. And it always was, but it's strange to think about, you know, Neil wrote that when he was 29, 30 years old, and it has never had more resonance than it does now. Like, you know, it's like Digital Man. The lyrics are more relevant now than they were 40 years ago. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, there's no there's no happy ending in this song. You know, the bell tolls for thee. It's you know, as Neil, it is what it is. But a beautiful song, well crafted, and you know, for those that, you know, Rush were still as progressive as they ever were in different ways. The chord changes this song goes through is amazing. And the lyrics are just, the lyrics aren't dissimilar to Middletown Dreams, but Middletown Dreams is like the happy version of it because he's got these two, character sketches. This one, I think wisely, it's the second to last song. I think they were wise not to close the album with this. They close it with Countdown, a look to the future and a look to a brighter future. But yeah, I can't add any more. It's just, it's not a feel good song, but it is a good song.
I'll say one thing about it I always found interesting is that he gives us two examples, not one, which is semi, conservative and usual and expected, not three, which would be like, okay, now I'm really showing you a set and really giving you examples. So he's got two, so he's got a certain amount of time that he could write here. It's almost like this is Rush. He could have put in three and it wouldn't have been that long a song, but it's interesting that he gives like two full verses to the dancer and two full verses to the writer. And even that's interesting that he's got a ballet dancer and a writer as the two examples, right?
Yeah.
There are probably more conventional things he could have done here, right? The sports person or rock star, someone playing guitar and the fingers ain't working and the arms ain't working or whatever, or ain't running as fast as I used to or whatever. So it's kind of two really cool examples, but it's a weird number to do too.
Yeah. Well, those examples, Martin, I mean, the parts about the dancer, right? I mean, that's physical ailments. That talks about physical, I guess, depreciation, and then the part with the writer, which is about Hemingway. I mean, that's a reference, that's a call to Ernest Hemingway, right? Who Neil was influenced by, but that part deals with 30 years ago, how the words would flow with passion and precision, but now his mind is dark and dulled by sickness, and that's mental ailments. So you've got it's two different things that happen when you age, right? You go physically and you go mentally.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
And yeah, I mean, Tim, like you said, some are born to move the world. I mean, that's been referenced so many times with Neil, but what Neil is writing about here is exactly what he didn't want to happen to himself, right? He didn't want to get to the point in Rush's career, or his career specifically, where he was a shell of his former self and putting himself on stage and not being Neil Peart that we know and love. And quite frankly, I mean, in 2015, when the band ended, I think it's perfect timing. I mean, he got arthritis, and then, a year later, we know that story. We won't go into that, but I think I think more or less he pulled the plug at the perfect time to where that didn't happen.
It's always been interesting to me. Neil, of course, has favorite writers, and you're right. The For Whom the Bell Tolls, it's Ernest Hemingway, and we talked about Ernest Hemingway with Grace Under Pressure, if I'm not mistaken. The thing about whether it's guts or whether it's grace or whether whatever. But Neil really admired Ernest Hemingway. Now, that idea of health and fitness and manliness, now Neil is not, going down to the gym to do 100 reps. That's just not Neil. But he likes the idea of the outdoor life. He likes the idea of living every minute, experiencing every minute. And I'm never surprised when he quotes someone like Ernest Hemingway, because that is just so typical of the kind of writer that Neil liked.
Neat. Yeah. Cool.
100%. I want to close with a trivia question for the three of you or for the viewers. What is the only song on this record where Neil is not given sole lyric credit for?
That's Chemistry.
Boom. There you go.
Nice.
Another awesome deep cut, which in my opinion is about the band and their chemistry together at the time. It's not about
Another great
science.
solo too.
Yeah.
Another great guitar solo.
Oh my gosh, we could go on and on about that. The last thing I wanted to mention.
May I just say one very quick thing about chemistry? Because of course, Martin and I have the privilege of, hanging with the band, knowing the band, etc. This was not an act. They liked each other. They enjoyed spending time together. This was not like three guys in three cabs staying at three hotels. They really did think of each other as friends. And when I read online some of these rumors about at the end, the guys in the band didn't even talk to each other, that's a lie. That is absolutely not true. They were friends right up until the final, they were there for Neil all the way. And to this day, the remaining members of the band keep in touch with each other, wish each other well, their families know each other. Now, do they spend every minute together? No, and they never did before. But I'm saying they really cared about each other. They really had an affection for each other. And that's rare in the music industry. Am I right, Martin?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just, I won't go into it, but another big trio, ZZ Top, is way at the other end.
Hello. Some other time.
All anyone has to do is for a more recent example, watch those beer commercials that Alex and Geddy did for the Rush beer. And I watched one of them and somebody had a comment that said, I think Alex lives to make Geddy laugh. And you can tell there's lifelong friends that just happen to become successful musicians together.
And they all had sense of humor. It was a complete myth that Neil was the serious guy that never had a sense of humor. No, it's not true at all.
Just got to watch that clip of them at the restaurant.
The hunting
Beyond the
lodge.
Lighted Stage extra features.
Mm-hmm.
That's so heartwarming.
Neil had a
just to
very
see them
dry
goof on
sense
together.
of humor. I mean, a lot of plays on words, puns, very clever.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. I want to quickly shout out. I figured that was that whole thing. Yeah, I figured that was the time.
I know that author.
This guy, bottom right corner, forward by this guy, top right corner.
I did something there. I cheered it on.
I was just about to say that. Right. Yeah, Donna, you wrote
back
what?
cover.
Back cover.
I wrote a
back
blurb.
cover blurb.
I blurbed.
Right next to the Fly By Night 8-track.
Oh yeah, right here. Boom.
Absolutely.
Top left corner, Donna. And yours truly.
And thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you for contributing.
And you deserved it because you worked hard on it.
This is awesome stuff.
Thank you.
Page 90. I even wrote about my Rush collections. The Analog Kid, Signals. What a segue. Anyways, awesome stuff, Tim. And also Martin's book, Driven, Rush in the 90s, this trilogy. I believe it's in paperback now, right, Martin?
Yeah, all three are in hardcover and paperback. Anthem in hardcover is gone, but I have the last few of those. I went and bought a bunch of them. I got freaked out when I was told I couldn't get any, so I actually went around and made sure I got some. So rare. We're at the rare moment for a couple of months probably where all you can get all three in hardcover or all three in soft cover, and then Limelight's going to be gone soon. So
cool. Well, you can reach out to both Martin and Tim and get yourself a signed copy as well. So good stuff. Donna, Martin, Tim, thanks very much for deep dive in Signals. This was a fantastic episode. Next month, we'll catch you with 40th anniversary coming out. It will have come out, and then we will deep dive it. Moving Pictures. So should be another fun one. Thanks, everyone. Take care.